Okay then, in today's video, I'm going to show you how to beat the Nightmare Celesting raid with one of the easiest teams that you can quickly put together. That's right, I'll only be using Loomians that have their normal abilities and are quite easy to get without requiring legendaries or even secret abilities. Firstly, to start off, let's quickly go over what the Celesting is capable of. The Nightmare difficulty is going to be level 55 and it will have a health stat multiplier of 3 times. So with that being said, this is what the Celesting stats will look like. It's going to be super fast, range hits are going to bounce off this thing, especially after it gets a few defense increases. It can also hit you fairly hard if you aren't prepared for it. Also, that health stat is for each health bar segment, not the entire thing. But there is some good news, the Celesting's melee defense stat is super low, so of course we're going to abuse that and spam melee attackers. Then the ability the Celesting will have is Effulgent, which will prevent us from using consumable items that only have a single use. So things like shells, pearls, clutch plushes, rageful plushes are off the table. They will not work. And then finally for the move, the Celesting will have Gamma Pulse as its main light type move that will hit both of our Loomians. Luster Loot is going to be a secondary light type move that can hit fairly hard after some range attack increases, and it can also heal depending on how much damage it does to you. Cosmic Chime will then be its main metal type move that will also ignore and bypass our abilities. And the last move it has is Resonate, which is a typeless move and it has a chance to raise its range attack stat by 1 stage. And now that we've quickly gone over what the Celesting is capable of, now let's go over the team that we'll be using. Which, I should say, you're completely fine to switch some of these out for other Loomians that you have, especially if you've already gotten them, so you don't have to go out of your way to make new Loomians. So, things like Wrestling with its secret ability is a really good option that you can use if you have one, and also, feel free to leave suggestions down in the comments. But the ace for my specific team is going to be Meditoad. With its typing, we can resist all of Celesting moves, which includes the Soul Burst move, Ololan Resonate. We're going to want to run a very brawny personality with 200 melee attack TPs to hit as hard as possible. The 12 energy TPs will let us use 7 electro punches without needing to wait or rest. And then the 200 range defense TPs and the 88 health TPs are leftovers that are going to increase our bulk. Then for the ability, we're going to be using Specialization, which will increase our power the fewer moves that we have. Which is also why we're using one move, Electro Punch, which is also our strongest melee attack that can hit the Celesting for super effective damage. And then for the held item, we're going to be using Specialty Gloves, which will increase our melee attack stat by 50%, although it has got a downside of locking us into the first move that we use, but as I just said earlier, we only have one move anyway. Although I should warn you, big exclamation mark here, that if you're watching this video like a year after it's been posted, this is planned to get a nerf sometime around the Season 1 ranked PvP updates. The nerf will make it so you won't be able to use a specialty item, so gloves, boots, and goggles, if you don't have 4 moves, which means it won't work with Specialization to have 2 huge attack stacks on top of one another. So, if you watch this video a year after it's been posted, you want to switch out the Specialty Gloves item with something like an Electric Essence instead. The next Loomian that I have is going to be Lushent, which you can either rally one from scratch or you can buy the Crown Lushent one from the PvP shop, which is exactly what I did. The typing is nice since we're power plant type, which means we can avoid Gamma Pulse and Luster Loot spam as well as the Soul Burst move, while the Dark typing will let us hit the Celesting for super effective damage. We're running a very brawny personality with 200 melee attack TPs to hit as hard as possible. The 36 energy TPs will let us use 5 Nalagashes before needing to wait or rest, and then the 200 range defense TPs and 64 health TPs are leftovers that'll make us bulkier. Then for the ability, we're going to be using Watcher to increase our damage output by 30% if we move last in the turn, which should be pretty easy since Lushent is fairly slow. The held item we're going to be using is Specialty Gloves, which will increase our melee attack stat by 50%. And then the move that we're going to want to use is going to depend on how old this video is for you when you watch it. If it's right after the video has been uploaded, then you'll want to use Slapdown as it's actually the strongest option right now. Although Slapdown is also planned to get a nerf around the Season 1 ranked PvP update, so it won't get a damage increase anymore. Which, in that case, if you're watching this video like a year later down the line, Naligash will be your best option to use. And then the last Loomian that I have is Tatab. The plant typing will prevent the Celesting from using Gamma Pulse and Luster Loot, and also the Soul Burst move, since we're immune, and then the Brawler typing will let us hit the Celesting for super effective damage. We're going to be running a Nimble personality with 144 speed TPs, which will just let us barely outspeed the Celesting. The Brawny personality with 200 melee attack TPs will then let us hit as hard as possible. The 20 energy TPs will let us use 5 jungle jutsus before we need to wait or rest, and then the 136 range defense TPs are leftovers just to increase our bulk. Then for the ability, we're going to be using Awakening, which will increase our stab from 25% to 50%. The item we'll be using is Specialty Gloves, which will boost our melee attack stat by 50%, and the best move option that we have right now for Tatab is going to be Jungle Jutsu. And with that, that is the team we'll be using, which of course you want all of these Loomians to be leveled up as highly as possible. And this team actually works if you're planning to take on the Celesting raid as a solo player. Although, of course, if you're going to play with a teammate, it will be much easier and much faster. But it is possible as a solo player, and it isn't too bad. But next up, let's go over the battle, because if we're playing solo, the NPC teammate we'll get actually kinda matters. The best NPC in my opinion is going to be Lucy. Her Buneki at the start of the battle is huge, with the Adorable ability lowering the Celesting's melee defense stat by 1 stage, and also having Magnify to waste a couple of Celesting special mechanics. The typing is also nice, so we don't have to worry about Gamma Pulse spam, but the rest of her team is pretty trash low, but at least they won't hinder us too much. The next best NPC is going to be Jake. His Nagoop at the start of the battle can poison the Celesting with Muck Blast or Venom Chomp, which can waste one of Celesting's special mechanics. But it also has Eerie Stare, which can lower the Celesting's melee defense and speed stats by 1 stage each, causing Celesting to waste another special mechanic. And the rest of his team is alright, like they won't really provide much use since later on in the battle they'll most likely get one-shotted, but the Eliguana can discourage Gamma Pulse from being used, and if the Serenite lives, it can use some super effective moves. But the worst NPC by far is definitely going to be Lucas. His Gabantis at the start of the battle could potentially be useful by poisoning the Celesting, or even using Clay Slap to decrease the Celesting speed stat by 1 stage, which will make it waste a couple of special mechanics. Although with the super low range defense stats, it's not going to stay around for long at all. Then he has a Eurosnack, which yeah, okay, it is super fat, but it's also weak to Gamma Pulse and Luster Loot, which isn't good because we want to avoid those as much as possible. But the worst offender on his team is definitely going to be the Eliguana, because it has the ability Lightning Rod, which will absorb our Medito's Electro Punch. Like, who do you think you are, stealing my move just to use Examine? What are you doing? So yeah, if you're going to take on the Celesting raid solo, I would definitely try and avoid Lucas as your random NPC with this specific team. And now let's go over the battle and what our Loomians are going to do. Which is actually very simple, we'll just want to spam our best attacking moves every turn. That's the strategy, which, can you really call that a strategy? The Meditoad is going to be the Loomian of choice that we're going to be leading off with at the start of the battle. It's going to stay around for the longest on our team, and it can put out ridiculous levels of damage. And once Meditoad is on the field, the only move that we really have to worry about is clicking Electro Punch. No strategy really for this, we just want to do as much damage as possible. Especially because earlier in the battle, the Celesting won't have any defense increases or attacking increases. We can put out huge damage without really getting hurt in return that much. And in the best case scenarios, Meditoad can beat the Celesting on its own if we get a little bit of luck. But at the very least, it should be able to take out 3 health bars unless we get really unlucky. Then from here, we can go into the Lashent and spam our strongest move, Slapdown or Nallygash. We're going to do a lot of damage to the Celesting, although because it's much later on in the battle, if the Celesting has any attack stat increases, Lashent probably won't stay around for too long. Lashent's goal is to either finish off the Celesting, or at the very least take it down to this final health bar, or potentially go even further and take it down to half of the final health bar. And then we can go into our Tatab, which we're probably not going to need it in most battles, but if our Meditoad and Lashent both faint, we can outspeed the Celesting to finish it off without needing to worry about it outspeeding us and risking a one-shot. But yeah, with that being said, that is how you can beat the Nightmare Celesting raid with one of the easiest teams that you can get your hands on.